Despite the headlines you might be reading here at home, now is actually the best time in history to be in the market for a two-row luxury electric crossover, case in point the 2027 Volvo EX60, which is here to put up a fight against newcomers from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and Genesis. But how does it stack up? Since our wonderful Lynn Woodward has already given you an in-depth tour of the interior and the exterior of the EX60, it's my turn to tell you how it drives and how it feels to be in the driver's position and really how it compares to the competition. And that requires talking about front seat comfort. When you get into the car, these seats are very, very plush. The leather is not real leather, but it's very, very comfortable and it feels like the real thing. But then when it's time to close the door, the Volvo design team did a little bit of an interesting thing with the design of the grab handle. It's a bit of a reach because it's not down here on the armrest, it's up on this fin at the upper portion of the door panel. So once you get used to the car, of course, you'll know where to grab going forward, but when you first get in, if you're not looking for it and you're just sort of grabbing aimlessly, you might not find the grab handle right away. But again, owners will get used to it. And once you do close the doors, they have a really solid sound to them. Everything in here feels very tightly screwed together. The materials quality is superb. I would say it's on par with the Genesis electrified GV70. When you're looking at the steering wheel, this reminds me a lot of the Lincoln Navigator or the Ford Expedition. It's very small. It's got this squircle shape to it, but I like the two-tone coloring. It's just a nice wheel to look at, and it has physical controls. However, these physical controls are tied to the touchscreen, so if you want to adjust your mirrors or your steering wheel position, you will have to go into the settings and then select which element you're trying to alter, and then use the controls on the steering wheel to do so. So if you don't like that, this might not be the car for you, but again, as an owner, you probably won't have to do that much. You'll probably do it the first time you get in the car and never touch it again. And of course, you can save the position of all these things to driver profiles. So if you have multiple drivers, it shouldn't be much of an issue. And then when it's time to buckle up, it's worth pointing out that Volvo has implemented a new seatbelt technology that actually has 11 different profiles of bodies. So in my position, I'm a 5'9" adult male, but my passenger might be a female or a shorter person or a taller person or a larger person. The seatbelts, they know this, and they'll be able to adapt to the front passenger's sizes. So that's a really cool thing, especially if you're concerned about crash testing, where they really only use adult male dummies. This will help you feel a little bit more at ease if you are not an adult male and you want to feel like, oh, the car can adapt to my body style and protect me, ideally, in a crash. I really like that Volvo is thinking about that, and that really does continue their legacy of having one of the safest lineups in the world. But rolling out of a parking lot now, you'll notice that there's a couple of regen modes. Just like on the EX30, rest in peace, and the EX90, there is a low setting, a high setting, an automatic setting, and there's also a creep mode. So if you like your car to creep at a stop, you can turn that on in the settings. That low regen setting is very, very smooth, but not super powerful. If you want full one-pedal driving, you'll have to put it into the high mode, or if you put it in the automatic mode, it will adjust based on the gap between you and the car in front of you. That is something a lot of other brands are doing now. And in this case, at lower speeds, if you're coming up behind a car, this automatic mode will actually fully stop the car. Of course, if you're coming up really fast on already stopped vehicles, you probably should hit the brakes yourself, because I tested that out and it was not able to bring the car to a full stop. I definitely had to take over for it. But right off the bat, this is, just like the EX90, one of the quietest cars I've been in so far in my career of doing this job. The quietest car I've ever been in was a Rolls-Royce Spectre, an all-electric Rolls-Royce that really is the pinnacle of quiet cabins. But Volvo is not far off with this. I am really, really impressed by how little is coming through these doors, which are frameless doors. Normally that would mean maybe more sound would get through, but the engineers did a really good job at keeping, of course, the weather isolation and the sound isolation at bay. Now there are three powertrain choices here in the EX60. There is the P6 rear-wheel drive, there's the P10, which I'm in, that is the dual motor all-wheel drive, and then the P12, which is the high performance model. The P6 and P10 have the same rear motors. The P10 just adds a less powerful electric motor up front, so you do have that rear bias, and then the P12 adds even more powerful motors to both the front and back. So that one's giving you over 600 horsepower, that less than 4 seconds 0 to 60 time. That one is really if you just want the all-out power. But again, I do think this is all that anybody really needs. And when you get into the P6 too, that car is very quick as well. No issue getting around traffic, no delays. It's just that typical electric experience. Now, as a driver, you're going to be interacting with the infotainment system a lot. This system is powered by Android Automotive, and that means it now actually has Google Gemini AI voice assistant, which can control a lot of elements of the car using natural voice language. It does take a little bit longer for those prompts to load in the system and then give you a response, but it's a really nice way to interact with the car, have a conversation, learn a thing or two. I do think that's a really cool feature for a car because for years now, voice systems have just been really, really underwhelming in terms of how capable they are. This is a giant leap forward in that regard. And right in front of the driver, we do have about an 11-inch display. There are 3 different settings you can go through, more of a simple view, a map view, or your driver assistance view. But it gives you all the information you need in big, bold fonts. It's very clear to read. It has very sharp graphics. No complaints with how that is implemented. And I kind of like the look of it. It sort of looks like a tablet up there, but the graphics are good enough that I'm not really worried about the way it looks up there. Now this screen right here is more of a 15-inch size, and it's got sort of a curve to it that's curved away from the driver. So I have this angle to look at, and the passenger has a different angle to look at. And it's a little bit interesting because you don't really notice it that much at first, but if you start really paying attention, you'll see, yeah, there's a curve there. And I don't know if that's like the biggest benefit in the world, but for off-angle viewing, it probably helps a little bit when there's sun glare. Now, because this is an ultra trim, we do have the electrochromic roof. All EX60s will have a glass roof, but on the base trims, you won't be able to gloss it over like I have it now, which blocks out the sun, but that does really help keep it a little bit more cool in here and prevents you from being blinded by the sun or cooked in the heat, especially if you leave this in a hot parking lot. Despite this not being a sporty car per se, I would say the fun to drive factor is still there because the way they've tuned the steering, the way they've tuned the suspension, it actually doesn't fight you to have fun. If you're pushing it at high speed through a canyon road, you don't really feel like you're gonna tip the car over, you don't feel like you're gonna fly off the road, the tires are grippy enough, and of course because we have the amount of power we do and the all-wheel drive grip, you really never lose traction when you're pushing it. So dynamics-wise, this is actually really impressive, but don't come looking for a very, very, very sporty experience. Volvo's lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control on the highway also work really well together. They're not aggressive in how they warn you about your impending lane change or any sort of obstacles in the road. It's all done in a very relaxed fashion, one that does not stress out the driver. There are a lot of systems out there that beep too much or vibrate too much or they just do too much, but Volvo has it really right in the sweet spot. One thing that Volvo is really proud of in this car is its audio system. This one right here is rocking the 28-speaker Bowers & Wilkins system, and like Mazda with its Bose Centerpoint system, they have strategically placed speakers so they don't vibrate elements of the cabin, and really the fidelity of this system is excellent. It does come with Dolby Atmos if you have a platform that supports that audio type, and the amount of adjustment you can do with the sound in here is very impressive. I think this is better sounding than the Bang & Olufsen in the Genesis GV70. It's definitely better than the system in the Audi Q6 e-tron, and it's probably on par with any Burmester you'll find in a Mercedes-Benz product. But gosh, the real takeaway here is how quiet this car is. I mean, the loudest thing in this car right now is the fan blowing air into my back from these ventilated seats. Now, you can't get the ventilated seats if you go for the wool-trimmed interior, only on this faux leather. But it's a pretty powerful ventilated seat, so if you've used those in the past and found them to be pretty weak, this one will do just fine for you. Interestingly, Volvo is going to offer this car with 3 different suspension setups. The P6 model will come with a fixed suspension with frequency selective dampers, but in this car we have adaptive dampers, and you can adjust how firm they are, but in the upcoming cross-country version, you'll be able to get an air suspension that's height adjustable. Unfortunately, they're not going to offer that outside of the cross-country model, and since that's not coming until the 2028 model year, I'm not able to test it just yet, but I imagine that'll give this an even more impressive ride. But even on the base P6 model with its suspension, the 22-inch wheels we were riding on still do not give you a rough ride. You actually forget you're riding on 22s. It's really quite impressive how they've tuned the suspension to be on the softer side, but not so soft that it's sloppy. Now, in terms of range, Volvo, of course, is advertising that big 400 number. However, the 400 range figure is only available if you go for the P12 because that one has the biggest battery on board. This P10 has the mid-size battery, and it will do in the low to mid 300s range. The lowest range figure you can get on this car is 295 miles with the P6 with the big wheels. So a 22-inch wheel on a P6 rear-wheel drive model, that's only going to do 295 miles. However, at $59,000 to start, that's still better than the Genesis electrified GV70 with its roughly 260-mile range. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the new BMW iX3, which starts a little bit over $60,000 and comes standard with 383 miles of range. The new GLC with EQ technology from Mercedes claims that it'll have at least 400 miles of EPA-rated range, but we don't know the exact figures for each spec. That iX3 currently is only coming in one spec, which is a dual-motor all-wheel drive spec, but I like that Volvo is launching with a rear-wheel drive as well to help you get into the car at a lower price point. And compared to the Audi Q6 e-tron, which I do believe of the Audi crossover EVs is the closest in comparison to this, the interior of this blows that away. The quality of the materials, the sound deadening of the cabin, it's just much more elevated in here than you find in that Audi. But that Audi costs a little bit more than this too. So the value play is really strong here in the Volvo. Now cargo-wise, this is roughly the same size as the gas/hybrid counterpart, the XC60. If you keep the rear seats up, the XC60 has about a cubic foot more than this, but fold the seats down and this has one more cubic foot over that car. So it is just about the same size. So if you were hoping to get an electric XC60 that doesn't compromise in space, they nailed it here with the EX60. So Volvo has really done their homework here. They've said that they wanted this to be an excellent car because it's an EV, and I think that's made it all the more better. So aside from perhaps adding a rear spoiler to give this a more dynamic look in the rear, I have warmed up to the overall design of the exterior of the EX60, and inside I've been blown away. Fantastic materials, fantastic sound system, and one of the quietest cabins in the segment, electric or otherwise. If those things appeal to you, then the EX60 is pretty much a no-brainer, especially when we know that the price is going to start right around $60,000, which should be very competitive against all of the newcomers. But if you want that high 400-mile range, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer and get that higher priced P12 model. We haven't driven that yet, but we can't wait to do so because the P10 model with its dual motor all-wheel drive is already stupid fast, and it's probably more than most people need. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the Kelley Blue Book YouTube channel and all of our social media accounts so you don't miss the next time we cover the Volvo EX60.